Hi, I'm Chris. I'm your host for the evening for the Crubcast. I'm joined today by the boys. First boy is Brody. Brody, please say hi and nothing else.
Hi, I'm Brody. Nothing else.
Thank you. Next to Brody is Sean. How you doing, Sean?
I'm doing all right. Kind of sweaty. How are you?
Kind of sweaty. It's cold outside, Sean. I'm okay, though. Thank you for asking. Moriarty, you're with us as well. How are you doing?
I sure am. Hello. And I'm so happy to be here.
I am glad you were happy to be here. It's nice to hear you. And rounding us out, we got that Trav guy from YouTube.
Brody and nothing else.
Okay. Well, I think we basically got it there. That's everything we would need. Okay.
Yeah.
So, boys,
See you all next week.
Okay, we'll see you next week. I have to ask, there's a big movie on everyone's minds. It's Mario. Who here has seen it?
I have.
I have not seen the new Mario.
All right, so two of us have seen it because I have also not seen it. Okay.
What? I have.
Three of us have seen it, if I can count. But the main thing...
But, I mean, you counted right. You just mixed it up. Anyway.
Yeah, let's go with that, actually. I think that makes more sense. That makes me look better. But basically, as a internet user, I was looking online as the reviews started hitting for the Mario movie. And when that Metacritic broke with an average of maybe a few dozen reviews, it was at a stinky rotten 53%. Is that what Rotten Tomatoes calls the reviews? Stinky rottens?
Something. I don't know.
Close enough. I think just rotten.
It had the splat. And immediately I saw people who were interested in the movie going, oh no, this movie may not be good. This may be a bad movie. People were bracing for it. People were ready for Mario to sound bad and all these other things I wasn't really keeping track of because I didn't really care about the movie that much. I just kind of thought it'd be okay. But people were very upset at an average of 3 or so dozen reviews coming out to not be painting it as one of the best movies ever made.
Mm-hmm.
That said, when you actually went and read the reviews, most of them said, hey, this was a fine movie and it was funny and it was cute, you know, not amazing, but not bad. Which I think is all anyone really should have expected it to be, right?
Yeah.
Right. So I guess where I'm stuck at here, my immediate question that we can branch out from is, why do we care about review score aggregates, especially in the day of our Lord 2023? The day of our Lord? Just the day.
The day of our Lord
He gets
2023.
He just gets one. Some say three, but just one
day, and it is this day.
Yeah, we just happen to get together on this day.
Yeah.
So why do review scores matter? And I think this is a really fascinating subject. I actually did a video on this, and so like I feel that I'm very prepared.
You did your homework
for this.
The rest of us had our dogs sit on the cable or eat the homework or something.
My
Exactly.
dogs, I ran with them. It's fine.
I feel that I'm very, very comfortable with this. I actually have 10 points, which I recently tweeted out. So like if you want to follow along, you can do that. And I think that there are a couple of reasons why review scores should not matter anymore. Why they are bad, right? For lack of a better term. I don't think there is any value in a review score. And since I feel that I'm maybe the most prepared for this discussion, I'm also willing to sit back a little bit because I don't want to lead it too much.
Right. I guess for context for people, I feel like for the average person, a review score really shouldn't matter beyond just looking at it and processing, oh, that is about how that author of the review felt about it. And I feel like that's about all the use it can really provide. There were instances we've heard of that trickled out over time. I think it was Fallout New Vegas from Obsidian. When that came out, I think it was Chris Avellone, the writer at the time, said we were promised a bonus if we got an 85 or plus on Metacritic. And it was something where 2 of the 3 versions of that game got an 84 on Metacritic, and then one of them got an 82, which is extremely close, all things considered, on a 100-point scale. But it wasn't 85 plus, and they didn't get the bonus. So apparently, someone somewhere on a corporate level is deciding, yes, these things actually do matter. We are going to base decisions like paying people more on a review score aggregate. But outside of that, if you are not that, and if you do not fall into that camp, I don't know why people get together and then wait for the review score aggregate to drop instead of looking at the reviews that actually go in depth on why these things matter, which I guess kind of
reading.
It does require reading, and nuance is a lost art on the internet in any form of sitting down and thinking about something seems to be out the window, which may just be the answer to our question, but I'd like to delve into more about that. Like, do you guys ever look at a review score aggregate for something you're looking forward to? Ever?
No.
Yes.
I used to. I definitely used to. I don't now.
I want to pick on Trav because Trav did say yes.
Yeah.
Why, Trav? Why?
Number.
Okay, great. Brody, please keep
No,
going.
I don't know. It's just like I want to know what people are thinking, even if I don't respect their opinion.
Okay, follow-up question. Do you then go and read the review past the number, or do you just see?
Yes.
Okay, I think
I do get that initial whenever I see the number.
Right.
I could have worded that better.
No, I think it's right. I think it conveys actually.
Yeah.
But then I go, like, when I saw those reviews, I'm like, oh, this might be bad. And then I read the reviews and I'm like, oh, maybe it won't be bad. That's it. It's just like a stepping stone into furthering my opinion is how I see it. I don't see it as how I will base my perception, I guess, is a way of saying it.
I think that's the correct way to be about it.
Yeah.
Because to further on from that point, these people were then waiting for new reviews to come to even out the score. And I was like, what are you doing with your time for one?
That's weird.
That is weird, right? That isn't a strange thought. That's weird. Bertie, you said you used to do it. What made you stop?
Yeah, well, I mean, I used to because it was like, oh, a game I would like coming out. Is it good? Is it bad? Let's see. It, like, I don't think I looked at review scores so much as I looked at Metacritic, which was just, the aggregate, right? And it's, and you would see like a little blurb of like IGN or GameSpot or whatever. You get like a little taste. And plus it has user score, which I find is not always the best indicator, but sometimes it's more reliable than the critic score in terms of like, oh, how much fun will I as a player have playing versus someone who's gonna think about this critically, like a weirdo does that.
Right. Because if you look at the audience score for the Mario movie, it's like a 97, 98%. Most people at that movie going, yeah, that was fun.
Yeah.
So
better than fine. They're actually saying like it was actively good.
Like you should go watch it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's still sitting at a 96%.
Yeah.
I think why I stopped looking at review scores is just, twofold. One, it's that I just want to play the game. Like if I'm interested in the game, I want to play it myself, find out for myself, which was the case with review score, like when I looked at it anyway. But I just find that like that's a fresher experience for me, going in just completely untainted by outside opinion if possible. And the other thing is that like 7 out of 10 means nothing when you look at a game review. Like it could be good, it could be bad, because that's where the scale ends.
It is the low point.
Yeah.
On a lot of places.
I mean, with the case of Rotten Tomatoes, I think that there's less nuance there, because if I recall, it literally just asks, was it good or bad? It doesn't ask for like a ranking out of 5. It's just like, did you like it? Did you not like it? And what you're seeing is the average.
Well, it's the average number of viewers or critics who liked or didn't like it.
Yeah. And I think that, there's a lot less room for nuance there, which in some regards when researching, just trying to find opinions on something that's coming out soon, I think that there is some valuable information there just to get a more accurate gut feeling, I guess.
I can see that.
I still think it's good to, look into it deeper than that. But I find it more, I guess, not accurate, but like, I find it more reliable than, say, like IMDb pre-release critic scores.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So the problem is that it's a fallacy, right? Like you look at the score and you go, oh, that score is somehow objective, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm going to give you some numbers here because I happen to know them, right? 80% of all reviews are between 6 and 9. 80% of all of them are between 6 and 9. And 40% of all reviews are a 7.5.
That makes sense.
So half of every review you look at is just a 7.5.
Yeah.
That's it. Which means that in reality, there's not this, grand spread. There is 6 and there's 7 and there's 8 and there's 9. And that's the grand spread. So having this 1 through 10, yeah, some things end up in a 1 and some things end up at a 10, but most things end up at a 7.5. So what is the value of a score if half, right? Flip a coin, you look at something, it's going to be a 75 out of 100. It's going to be a 3.5 stars. Right? If you're flipping that coin and it is, every time it hits head, it's being that 75, I find that they have no value. Right? Outside, again, of what Chris mentioned with developers, because I'll give you another number, which is a quote from Bobby Kotick, the illustrious, wonderful head of Activision.
Yeah.
Well regarded.
For every For every 5 percentage points in Metacritic score above 80%, Activision found that sales of a game roughly doubled. Right? So people are looking at these and they're saying, oh, so it's 80. Well, it's 85. It's 90, 95. Oh, it must be really, and they're buying these things, right? So if a game is a 95%, it's 16 times the sales of a game that was at 80%, right? Just by virtue of having that review score. So these reviews are being taken seriously by the people who are looking at them. Right? By the consumers going and saying, oh, should I go see the Mario movie? Should I buy, Forspoken? Should I do that? And they're looking at this and they're reading those review scores and not the reviews, just the scores. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're deciding their things off of that. And even still, half of them are still going to be 75 out of 100. So is there a value? I don't think so. But is there a value? Yes, right? Mm-hmm. I think that they have no value to the user, and yet they are so very valuable.
Yeah. So, it's for the casual person who's like, oh, should I get this game? Should I not? They're going to look up the score rather than having a specific, reviewer that they go to. Like, for me, for example, I go to certain YouTubers to get an idea of, okay, do I want to even check out this game or not? Whereas, the casual person's going to see, oh, this got an 85. I'll give it a shot. It's on sale. Why not? Or, it's in theaters. I'll go check that out. And I think there's a lot of nuance that does go into review scores. And I've seen quite a few that do, make people want to pull their hair out. I saw Glover got an 8.4 on IGN, and that makes me hate being alive.
That's a good score for Glover.
It is not. Stop. I need you to just stop. But,
yes, sir.
But see, what I like to do is I like to go and see what scores make absolutely no sense and, compare the two. Like, why did Glover get an 8.4 and yet Pokemon Mystery Dungeon gets a 4? It makes me, why? But, so, does it have value? In commonplace, unfortunately, yeah. And I say unfortunately because, it's the thing. But that's why you see a lot of, outside of IGN or Metacritic and stuff like that, that's why you see a lot of YouTubers who used to have, I rank this a 4 out of 5 or something like that. A lot of them have gotten away from those scores because they don't really matter. And it's more about, what the game is. And that's why, for me, if it's a game that I know I want to buy first week, first day, I don't look up a single review because I want to go in without any expectations, any thoughts. I just head empty, let's go. And it has turned out to be, it's always interesting to see my experience and then compare it to other people afterwards. Like the Mario movie, I liked it a lot. Is it the best thing ever? No, but I enjoyed that a lot. And to see it gets, but to see it get so many bad reviews, I'm like, well, 50, whatever you want to call it. I'm like, oh, that's, I don't get that at all.
Even the bad reviews, I feel like I looked at and was like, I get it though. A lot of them were like, it is kind of paper thin. You kind of know what you're getting.
Oh, absolutely.
Is it?
And Paper Mario movie?
Yeah, God.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but Moriarty, you brought up how it was one of the lowest animated video movies since 2012 or something like that. Meanwhile,
since Hop. Since Hop.
Oh, wow.
Food Fight has come out since then. Food Fight has come out. Norm of the North has come out since then. And so you have movies like that where it's but that's what I mean is it brings up interesting discussion because it's why is that a thing? Why did you do that?
I like how we're just no-selling this.
I'm
Look,
sorry.
man, I'm happy for Norm. I just.
I'm sorry.
He's come a long way. It's been a long journey for Norm of the North.
I just
Is that
wish I knew how they
Twitter
felt.
still running? Hold
It
on,
better
let me see
be.
if that Twitter. I'm looking now.
So Sean, you actually mentioned that it's difficult to compare review scores, and I think that that's an important thing because I don't think that a consumer should be comparing scores, but we do, right? Like naturally, we compare these two scores. But the scores, there's three things that I've often found that you need to take into account with regards to any sort of like historical review score: context, era, and reviewer bias. Right?
Yes.
And those are really difficult because as you look back, right, a 5 out of 10 today is trash.
Yep.
Trash fire, right? But a 5 out of 10 in 1995 is, this game doesn't work so good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Myst was a 5 out of 10, and it's one of the most influential games of all time.
Yeah.
And it was a 5 out of 10.
Really?
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Huh.
So like the subjectivity of it has changed, right? We've slowly seen sort of like a power creep or a score creep rather, where the scores used to be kind of this 1 through 10 and now they're the 6 through 9. And so that makes it really difficult to kind of compare things, right? What's the context of this, and so on. I like to point out IGN's lowest rated score ever, which is for Olympic Hockey Nagano 97. I think it's a 0 out of 10. It's the only 0 they've ever given, right? And the reason they gave it was because all they changed in that game was they updated the roster and added some new mechanics to a hockey
How
game.
could they?
Which, like, you hear that and you compare that to today's Madden or you know, EA and NBA 2K3, 23, which did nothing. It changed nothing. I mean, one of them, I want to say it was 20, was just 2019 again. 2K20 was just 2K19 again with new rosters, but the rosters didn't change because of COVID. So it was the same game.
I definitely remember.
And back then,
sorry, I just definitely remember one where they even looked at the installer icon on PC and it was the year before's installer icon.
It was identical. Yeah, absolutely. And maybe I'm wrong with which one it was and why, but I know there was one that was absolutely identical. Yeah. And yet at one point IGN was so offended by the Olympic hockey only adding some new mechanics that they refused to review it and gave it a 0.
Yep.
Right? That is an era important context that does not follow through today.
So one thing to follow up on what Moriarty did say, especially with regards to game review scores and IGN. I've seen the reasoning come out from them, and I do think it makes at least some sense, right? Where the reason they give so many scores between the 6 and the 9 range is because they just don't have time to put people on the games that are more obviously bad. I think that's paraphrasing, obviously. And also they don't have the staff and resources to put people on to actually covering those games either way. So therefore you tend to follow what will get the clicks. And what gets the clicks is usually what people what's already on their radar, right? So does tend to be more often than not games that are at least vaguely, relatively solid to pretty good. And that does seem to have created this issue we have where everything is in the 6 to 9. You'll get the occasional 10 and you go, oh, I guess that game's very good. That got a 10. Like I'm sure Breath of the Wild was a 10 at a lot of places, right? That was a moment of like, oh, okay, that's not just good. That's really good. But for the most part, games just kind of fall into that range where it's like, yeah, you'll probably like it.
Yeah.
It's probably good
sense.
enough for you, right? But it does create a thing where it's like, well, why do if all we're covering are games in that range, why do we need the score then at that point? Like if everything's in that range, why bother?
So if everything's good, right, then do we really need to have any sort of score differentiator to say whether this is good, this is really good, and this is really, really good? You actually hit on like 3 different points there. And I think that all of them are kind of important for understanding it, not the least of which is limitations in bandwidth, right? So like how many games come out versus how many people can review them. Like Trav, How long does it take for you to do a review?
Way too long. I'm still figuring that out. But
if you
are we counting the whole process?
To do a video, if you didn't have to do a video, if you were just writing a review.
Oh, okay. If I had to put like hours to it, crap, I don't know. We'll
play
say,
the game all the way through, let's say the game's 15 hours or whatever,
okay.
like a normal. How long would it take you to put together what you would feel would be a good representative review of that 15 hours?
Probably be off and on for a couple days, so that would probably be, after refining it a bit, probably close to 8 hours.
Okay, so we're taking that, we're saying, all right, now you've got a 24, 25 hour long process for just a single game, which means that you could only do 1 to 2 per week, right? Mm-hmm. Well, how many games come out every week?
Yeah.
And we need to cover every single one that even, is worth talking about. And that becomes even bigger when you've got a game, like a JRPG. Mm-hmm. At what point do you stop playing that JRPG and say, okay, I'm ready to do the review?
Yeah.
Because you'll get pushback sometimes from the audience. It's like, well, I got 80 hours
you didn't complete it?
But you didn't finish it? Well, maybe the last 20 hours really turned it around. Like Final Fantasy 13, right. How far do you get into that game?
Yeah. You put in 50 hours to get out of the tutorial. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I think that limitation of bandwidth is a reasonable thing. But at the same time, it is part of it where it's like, okay, if you don't have the time to do this, right, then why do it? And I get why, right? Like, I know what the answer is, and it's always the same answer. It's money. But like, if that's the answer, that sucks. That just straight sucks.
Yeah.
And it also leads to another problem in the exact same vein. And this is not even one of the 3 issues that you mentioned, but it's in the same vein, where you have some guy who doesn't like a JRPG being forced to do the JRPG.
That never made sense to me.
I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
But it happens because you have to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. I get that it happens, but that, like, to quote our other Crubcast member Nico here, that seems like a huge oversight. Like, it's like, why would you do that to your publication? Like, put someone that actually knows what they're talking about on the article.
Then you can get into a weird space sometimes where it's like, well, we have a guy on staff who really likes Persona. He loves Persona. So I guess we'll stick him.
10 out of 10 game.
I guess we'll stick him on Persona 5 Royal, the re-release of Persona 5. Oh, he scored it a 10 out of 10? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So where?
Yeah, for one piece there, right? Like, and this is the second problem, I think, with these review scores leading into it immediately, right? Is that guy would say, I love this game, but he wouldn't be able to rate it a 10 out of 10 because in almost every one of these major publications, the people who are determining the scores are the editors.
Yeah.
Right? So the editor is reading that review and they're going, oh, this sounds like a 10 out of 10. But they're not actually the reviewer, so they are making up. We have the first level of subjectivity, right? Which is me, the reviewer, reviewing the game and my subjective feelings on the game. And then a second level of subjectivity where we have your editor coming in and going, here's how I feel about your review of this game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then they just create a score, right? And of course, what are they most likely to do? Well, it's a 7 out of 10. You kind of liked it a little bit. And you get that continuation of the bullshit, right?
Yeah.
Of this 7 out of 10 IGN garbage. The most famous example of that, right? And it gets caught up all the time, and I think that it's really unfair that it does, is the Pokemon Too Much Water.
Yes,
I knew you were going there.
Yep.
It gets called up all the time. She never wrote those words.
Yep.
She never wrote those words.
If you read her review, she used more words to get that point across, which is a lot of this game is water, and there's nothing in the water but the same water Pokemon for a lot of the game, which is an awesome criticism of that game because it's very true. But everyone scrolled to the bottom and it said too much water, and they went, well, that's what we're going to repeat.
If I recall, that line came from the video review that was just kind of paraphrasing the whole thing, and it was at the very end when they were discussing the scores. And it was
it was done by the editor.
Yeah, it was literally just a thing done by whoever was paraphrasing.
Yes.
Because the
which
editor tends to
it
put
really
on the
just-
pros
go
and
ahead.
cons at the end. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was done by the editor who just, blithely wrote too much water there at the end. And what did you have happen? This woman's career was derailed for years because she was the idiot who wrote too much water. Ha 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 ha.
Despite not being the one who did it.
Nobody took. The thing is, if you read that review, literally the paragraph above too much water is the explanation of why there's too much water.
Yeah.
And it's a good explanation.
It is, yeah.
And it is in no way changed the scope because people just don't read it.
And I think that also kind of proves why people care so much about review scores. It's just the number. That's it. They don't have to read anything more. It's just like, 8 out of 10. Okay, that sounds good.
So that leads me to the second issue there,
Okay.
which is there's this heavy focus on easily summarized content, right?
I love YouTube Shorts.
For monetary reasons, right? Like if I can make a review, if I'm Trav and I have to spend 25 to 30 hours making a video, or rather making just the review, right? Well, I know that I'm only getting paid. We have a mutual friend, Chris, who was previously on a different review site and was being paid per review. I think you know who I'm talking about.
Yes.
And he eventually left that site, but he was being paid per review, and I think it worked out to $2 an hour.
Ooh.
Because you don't get paid for the time the game took in a lot of these cases.
So like I'm pretty close. I think it may have been $3 an hour, but it was $2 to $3 an hour you were actually getting paid for these reviews. So if you're looking at that and you're saying, well, this review took me 30 hours and I'm getting paid $2 an hour because I'm only getting, $60 to do this review or whatever it is, right? Well, what is my best option there? Right? And that is to do 5 games that take me 5 hours a piece instead of doing 1 game that takes me 25 hours. So I'm incentivized monetarily to focus on very quick, very summarizable content, right? That is easily digestible and just kind of throw it out there as quickly as possible in order to get as many ad views as possible. As many views on the 55 ads I'm showing on my website as possible.
Yeah.
I love this topic because it just keeps branching out into other things. Because then you have the issue of like, okay, well, how do we get someone to actually read this review? To show them the ads, right? And this is probably a topic for a different day. But then you start getting into like thumbnails, titles, and all this kind of fun stuff of like, well, I got to get the click. Pog face.
Yeah.
That's one thing I saw when a few weeks back when this blew up on IGN or whatever. As I saw some people, I can't remember what publication it was from, saying like, oh, we use the review scores as like basically like shock factor to get you in to read the actual review. And I'm like,
Ooh.
I get it, but also what?
Yeah, it's terrible.
That's
terrible.
I don't like that.
That leads into all sorts of issues with, so like review culture itself, right, is problematic because they want to review everything, right? So like not only is there this sort of like incestuous monetization issue in there, not only is there like this determination based off of clickability and whether or not, a game warrants a review in the first place. But then additionally, it's, we need to do the things that maybe don't matter so much, right? I don't think every game needs a review or a score. And yet one of the famous ones for me, because I love to find these random examples that are so good. There is a review for Minecraft Story Mode Episode 2. And I don't know if you've ever played Minecraft Story. And I'm talking about Season 1, Episode 2, not Season 2.
How much did I know
the
this?
reason why I say that is because you cannot buy Episode 2 of Season 1 separately. It's part of the entire thing. So you can only get it by buying the full season. So they went in and they did a review of an episode of a full season, and I find that to be the least useful thing that you could possibly do.
Was there at any point, like, was that ever released episodically? Because that, I mean, it would almost make sense for like the other Telltale games, right? That actually do release like that.
It was.
No, it was released. You could only buy the whole thing. You couldn't buy one episode at a time when it was released, right? So going in and doing this review is unnecessary because you need a review for the larger season overall, right? You need a review for how good is Minecraft Story Mode Season 1.
Well, yeah.
Because Episode 2 doesn't fucking matter,
well,
right? A review for it doesn't matter.
Not to get too into
because
the
you
weeds.
either own it or you don't.
Not to get too into to the weeds, I guess, because it is, on one hand, yeah, like they've just given you a full product in one go, and like just titled it episodes, like the way that Uncharted has chapters.
Correct.
Right.
But like, I also kind of, I mean, I get it. I get it for any other Telltale game, because like people do, you know, Last of Us Episode 3 review,
What?
kind of thing. Not the game, the show.
Okay.
But like, you know, like as a show is coming out, like people will do reviews of individual episodes. And so when it comes to the other Telltale games, like the ones that did actually release episodically, I get it. But in this case, I don't know, it's a weird line, because like it is built like every other Telltale game, but it has come as one whole product. So it's, I don't know, it's a weird line.
It's a sign, if you ask me, right? Like, it's part of the kind of the review culture. How valuable is, say, a review for an open beta, right? The beta is going to be around for 5 days, 3 days, whatever, right? And it's free, and you can just go play it yourself. Do you really need to have somebody else have, 30 hours and put in a review 2 days before it disappears?
Right.
I just don't think that's super valuable. But because it generates clicks, right? It's just and my issue is just that the sum total reason that you're doing that is because it's generating clicks and nothing else.
Yeah.
Just try to imagine a hypothetical person who's like, well, I bought Minecraft Story Mode Season 1. I don't know if it's worth my time to go to Episode 3, so I guess I'll just read this review and see what this guy said. Oh, it's an 8 out of 10. Okay, I guess I'll play it.
You know what's a really...
How many people is that?
Yeah, but you know what's a really weird thing about Minecraft Season, like Story Mode? It's delisted. Out of all the Telltale games,
yep,
I expected that one to be the one that like stood the test of time, but it got delisted. But you can still watch it
on Netflix.
It's on Netflix.
You can play it on Netflix.
Right.
It's interactive.
But so like I have like a PlayStation 4 with like the entire Minecraft thing, which I don't know why. I bought a lot of Telltale games for some stupid reason.
Things happen.
And but like it's so wild. God, I've made so many terrible decisions in my life. But it blows me away.
And this is not one of them.
Yeah, this is like one of 3 good decisions I've made. But like, it blows me away that like, again, that's why do people review like episode per episode? Like, I cannot tell you a single. I've played all the Walking Dead games.
Well, I think Trav was going to jump in here.
Yeah, so this is
yell at me.
It's a little bit of devil's advocate, a little bit of actual feeling. I don't know where I lie on what I'm about to say, which is going to make this really not interesting. But what I was going to say is basically, I feel like at that point, it's basically when it comes to, say, written reviews like IGN or whoever was it IGN that wrote that episode 2 review?
Hypothetically,
whoever it was,
for example's sake,
it's people. It's just journaling, a diary at that point. It's like, I'm playing this game, let me write a review of it, because that's basically exactly what I do with my video content. It's basically a journal of my time playing through this game. It's not even a review at that point. I'm not trying to tell people whether or not you should play this game, whether or not you should buy this game. I just call them that because that's what other people call them. And I feel like that idea, that mindset, I'm not saying that they're inspired by other people who do this, like the people that inspired me to do this. But I'm saying that people kind of come to that like, this is the idea. This is what I want to do with what I make, I guess. And they're turning their reviews into a glorified diary of the kind of stuff they want to do because I don't know, quotas. Maybe they're being pressured to put something out that kind of went off the rails. That's not where I was going with the original tangent.
Quotas probably touches on it more because like if that's just someone's personal blog or YouTube or whatever, then like, hey, that's awesome. I think it's great that people put their opinions out on things. I like to read their opinions on everything.
I think
it's
people
great.
should have less opinions.
Okay, Nico. But for, like if you're IGN, it's probably a quota thing, right? It's like, A, this will get us clicks. B, I guess that's everything that matters to us at this point. So we need someone to do it. So we'll get someone to play it and we'll get someone to write it because someone has to. We can't not have Minecraft Story Mode Season 1, Episode 2 on our front page. What else are we going to put up there this week? I guess we'll make someone do it.
Guys, the Episode 1, that review did really well. We need those numbers again. Can we get someone on Episode 2, please?
Because like we're in the weeds, but this is Minecraft, you know. Even if it's not the Minecraft.
I think that is a part of it, though.
Blocks.
That's a huge part of it is clickability, right?
Yes.
So like you're not wrong, actually. The clickability of a thing is a huge amount of like what warrants a review. And I understand it, right? Like I don't fault any of these websites for looking at a game and going, this is the next big thing and everyone wants to know about it. So I'm going to go ahead and do it. I just question it when, say, IGN does a review on Cooking Mama Cookstar, right? Which you'll recall nobody did a review on.
Was that the PS4 one?
That was the PS4 and the Switch one that was
crypto
stolen.
mining one, right?
Yeah.
It was the one that was accused of having Bitcoin miner in it.
Yeah.
And the thing is that after it was accused of having a Bitcoin miner, the game was pulled and nobody could buy it anymore. And 2 days later, IGN did a review on it.
Nice.
Right? They didn't do a review before it was released. They didn't do a review while it was live. They did it 2 days after it came out because exclusively clickability.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes it feel like, hey, this is kind of, you know, cheap.
I can't believe J9 did that review. All
God,
17. That man has, I don't know how many copies of that game.
He has an issue with
Did he
Cooking
actually
Mama,
get them?
to be clear.
Yes.
He
Oh, wow.
has a problem. Like there's an actual problem with Justin. That might need its own look at a different time, but that is very applicable to Justin.
We'll do that intervention later.
Yes. But I think that's what it is, right? Like it's like, well, this is
right. I
suddenly
accept
a thing.
that some games are going to receive more attention, right? Like I get that, especially when there is a question of whether or not game A or game B is going to generate more clicks. And I super understand that because I get that there is a need for these companies to make money, right? Like not every YouTube video that I've ever made is something that my whole heart and whatever is poured into. Some of the time I look at it and I go, this one might make a lot of views and it could help me pay a bill, right? Like that's part of the rationale behind it. But there is sort of this difference when something like the Cooking Mama thing happens where it doesn't feel like there's any merit and there's no value to the customer. It's just spectacle.
Yeah. It's look at me, and that's. I think that
It's
also
turned into a sport.
Yeah, it just turns into like the whole, clickbait thing without it really being clickbait, but it's hopping on the opportunity to get those views, get that extra money, even though there's no care put into it at all. It's just like, yeah, money, yeah, send it.
It's a thing where the environment sucks. You can't really fault anyone for doing it, like Moriarty said. It sucks that it is this way, though.
Yeah, and I don't.
No, but what I do fault them for, right? And this is sort of like the last point on this particular issue for me, I think. What I do fault them for is the fact that they do it in kind of a predatory way, right? And what I mean by that is that I, as a reviewer, when I review a video game or when I review a company or when I review, whatever, and I say, here's what I think about this thing. You can go and you can spend some time and kind of get to know my editorial voice and learn that I don't really like X and I really like Y. And so when I do a video on Z, you can kind of, apply my dislikes and my likes to it and understand who I am as a person and as a reviewer and how that relates to you, right? You can put it through that filter and understand how what I say matters to you.
Yeah, and that,
but you can't do that with IGN.
Right. And I think that goes back to what I said in the beginning. Like, there are certain reviewers where, like, I'm like, hey, we have similar mindsets. I know what you like, I know what you dislike. And that's what draws me to YouTube reviewers, like exactly what you just said.
Right.
Yeah.
Because like I followed people at IGN for a while.
Right. You and Brody both are two people who have followed personalities from IGN, from Kotaku, from Polygon, from Eurogamer, right? Like, and you have found sort of a taste for these people, right? Brody, I think, is Greg Miller, right? Like a lot. And then I feel like Chris is Jason Schreier, but I could be wrong.
Not specifically, but I do keep up with what he does, just because
you follow along with these people.
Yeah,
exactly.
But then they leave.
But you can't do that with IGN because they got so big that they left.
Yeah,
they left.
They leave. So like, even if I'm following these people at like an IGN, they do leave and new names come in. It's like, well, am I going to learn these people's taste and everything they're into and follow them the same way? Am I going to keep rotating to read IGN, or am I just going to throw my hands up in the air and follow them elsewhere and just kind of push away from it?
Do you follow Greg when he leaves?
Yeah, I mean, when Greg Miller left IGN, like, I started watching Kind of Funny. Like, I didn't stick with IGN, you know? It's one of those things where you just find someone that, like, you try, and it doesn't necessarily even need to be someone that agrees with you all the time. Like, I can watch a review of someone who, like, explicitly doesn't like platformers or something, reviewing a platformer, and be like, and come out of it going, okay, I want this game now. Like,
sure.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is what I mean when I say that it's sort of predatory now, because IGN purposefully kind of obfuscates who writes a lot of their stuff. They hide them in tiny little letters, either at the very, very, very top where you can't click on their name and see their other stuff, or at the very, very bottom in like a, you know, sort of muted gray text that you can click on and see this, you know, horrifically organized thing of what else they've written, and no social links or anything. You know, like, they make it very difficult for you to find somebody on IGN and go, I like this voice and I want to follow this voice. Yeah. And that's the part that feels predatory to me about how they do it, because they know that you're there for a person, and they very specifically want to rip that away and force their own brand on top of it, so that you come away from it going, ooh, this IGN review. Yeah. When it wasn't an IGN review, it was a Steve, you know, Blowback review.
Steve
where you go,
Blowback!
This is the guy, and I really like that. You know?
I used to follow some Blowback reviews, yeah.
It is now. Another
issue, and I do believe them when they say it's a back-end thing, right? But over time, as they update their backends or their databases or whatever these sites do, I'm not a technical person. Over time, these names get wiped, and it just becomes by IGN staff, by GameSpot staff. Like, I've heard from so many people who are at GameSpot in like the late 90s, they're like, I just can't find anything I did back then because my name's not on them anymore. Like, either their account on their back end got voided over time, or something got lost as they updated something or another, but no one goes back in and puts the actual name of the author in these old reviews and articles. It's just, it's by IGN staff, and that's just how it is from then on.
I couldn't find the Glover reviewer. I tried, but
well, that's for their personal safety, I think, at that point. But broadly,
when you're that popular.
You know,
it's funny you bring up the outdated stuff, because I think that actually reaches into a whole different thing. I don't know if we want to open up this one just yet. Are you ready to move on to a whole different subject?
Let's see what you got.
I had a question for the room.
Yes.
Just for the people that are more familiar with the review and embargo process, which I imagine is everyone on this podcast but me. Generally speaking, do you feel that game companies give early review copies early enough to complete their game and get it so you know, a 100-hour RPG, does it come out early enough to get it done, or a 2-hour indie game, does it come out early enough to get it done? You know what I mean?
It depends.
Yeah, there are certain games, like if it's like a 10-hour game, maybe, like especially if you have like a week to do it, because I did my entire Sonic Forces review in like 4 days, but that's also like a 2-hour game.
Yeah.
And also I have the procrastination of a 2-year-old running through a Toys R Us or Walmart, since Toys R Us is dead.
Cheers.
But
Not
That's
here.
a very old 2-year-old at this point.
yeah, but what
Right.
I am
God.
also a very old 2-year-old.
But like you said, there are JRPGs that take forever. Like I am playing Persona 4 Golden, and I am taking my sweet old time. If I had to rush to Persona 4, I feel like I would just not be into it as much as I am now. And I think
Is
that,
that a real-
yes, it is a real thing.
Mhm.
But like I think so many you have to speed up to do it, or else you just miss out on all the marks. You miss out on the video opportunity.
Mm-hmm. It really depends who from, because I've gotten some stuff from Sega. Like I've gotten Soul Hackers 2 and a few Yakuza games. In most of those instances, I got the game like a month early, which was luxurious. That was heavenly from my own personal experience with this stuff and from hearing it from others. Like that is like an amazing amount of time. That's like a comfortable, I can take my time on this.
Yeah.
If that's the only game I'm reviewing, which I imagine for a lot of outlets, maybe someone is handling another game or two at the same time. For me, it's great, but you don't always get that. From what I hear, they're kind of an outlier with that. It's not often that generous, unfortunately.
You know what you just reminded me of was when Metal Gear Solid 5 was getting early reviews. I want to say it was IGN was infamous for rushing the hell out of their review and gassing that game up like nothing else. Like this game is going to solve world hunger levels.
Yeah.
And it did.
And
no one's been hungry since,
we're gonna
Kojima saw the future.
Metal Gear Solid came out. He came out of the Boulder house after 3 days. Gave everyone.
Do you making Metal Gear Jesus right now?
Metal Jesus.
Metal
Jesus Solid. Metal Jesus Solid.
Someone should get on that.
Metal Jesus rocks.
No.
He's like,
anyway,
he's like the.
So my point
snake.
bringing that up was no, like you're totally right that there's like I had a point earlier. Now I'm going to try to use words until the point comes back to me.
All right.
You totally had a point there when you said those things.
Oh, Trev.
I had a point.
I know you know what you mean. I know you know. You gotta help us.
I can't remember what I was going to say. Like it's almost gamified that it becomes a competition to put out the first review, and that heavily skews first impressions, like almost more than buying them off. Well, maybe not more, but like I don't know. That's the gist of my point. Quick, Chris, help.
I'd like to hear more about that, Trev. What do you mean when you say that it heavily skews towards first impressions?
Because in the case of Metal Gear Solid 5, I'm using that as an example because it's fresh on my mind, and I remember that review from IGN. That is a long game. Like, in order to unlock the final mission, I want to say you need to have like a minimum of like 20 hours.
Yeah,
it might be more. Well, for a first playthrough, I'm sure that you could like exploit it.
Well, now, but
and
then.
The details are fuzzy. I can't remember right now, so maybe don't quote me on this. But I want to say there was some outing, I guess, that was saying that they only spent like maybe 5 hours of gameplay time with that for that review. Like it was just, we had a lot of fun in the sandbox that is Metal Gear Solid 5. After 3 hours, I can confidently say this is the best game for global warming. And
there are fundamentals of that game that do not open up.
There are brand new mechanics that are not given to you until like 10 hours in.
Right.
Yeah. It really is a part 1, part 2 type game.
So, okay. I haven't really followed IGN much since then. I kind of fell off of the traditional video game outlet, I guess, would be the best way of putting it.
You're into those tubers. You like watching those YouTube
I
videos.
love those tubers, man. But I stopped. It was because of that I just kind of stopped paying attention to written game reviews in that sense, I guess. kind of walking on eggshells here trying to explain that. I fell off, yeah. But I just lost my train of thought. That's why we're not supposed to look at chat, guys.
Yeah.
Gosh, what were you thinking, Sean?
Bland. Nothing.
Right.
See, Sean didn't even get to the second map in Phantom Pain. He just reviewed
That's not true at all. That's not true at all. No, stop. We're not
talking about
Sean
Chris.
doesn't even know that Africa exists.
Wait. I thought we were talking about Chris.
mean?
Chris didn't make it to the second map?
How did you think me saying Sean didn't get to it?
Because I didn't hear you say Sean.
What do you mean?
Okay.
I thought Chris said something, and then Sean got really upset for him.
Well, now I have to defend my gamer card. I played like 100 hours.
Trev just ratioed himself. Stop looking at chat. I'm closing.
Everyone, I think we did a good job here tonight. I don't know if we solved anything, but I think we at least
Metal Gear Solid solved global hunger. No, wait.
Global hunger.
Global hugger?
I would say that's entirely unrelated at that point, but I think it could have saved that.
So much has happened.
Trav, how are you doing?
Trav, look at me. Trav, look at me right now. Look at me face to face.
Do you remember?
Are you ready to move on to the last part of what I think the problem is?
Yes,
I'm
please
ready.
take us there.
Okay.
I will shut up.
And it's actually a two-parter here,
Okay.
right?
Part one.
The first is that, and you've kind of all sort of hinted at it a few times here, but I don't think we've actually discussed it, which is outdated reviews, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that they are not updated, or if they are updated, they're updated kind of willy-nilly at the kind of whim of whichever reviewer chooses to do it. If you're the player of an MMO, right, that original review is useless to you. And sometimes they'll do expansion packs, but let's say you're in an MMO that doesn't do an expansion pack, it just releases updates like, I don't know, ESO, right? Like it doesn't do expansion packs every couple of months. They can be huge periods of time in between an expansion pack, and there's a lot of updates to that. Is the review still relevant at that point?
Yeah.
Final
Fantasy 14.
Notoriously very good at launch.
Right, a hugely different launch to what you played today because of the whole New Awakening thing.
Yeah.
Or even a game like, Fortnite, which is one of the most played games in the world with, 350 million monthly users. And it is not the same game as it was at launch by a huge amount. Just like a mess. There is no way you would not play. If you were to play those two games side by side, they're not the same game. They're not even on the same engine anymore because now Fortnite's on Unreal Engine 5.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
so
really?
It's a completely different game.
And there's two very important questions that come from that. A, how do you review that? And B, for a free game like that, why do you review that?
Yes.
I always liked Steam's take, like the way that Steam did it, where they have like a overall. I mean, they don't even have a number, right? They just have an overall like review of it, where not review, like overall thing, and it's like overwhelmingly positive or mixed or whatever, and then they have a thing under it which is like recent reviews, and you
the graph
could be different.
Yeah. I do like Steam reviews because of that. I always like the Steam reviews are like, I freaking hate this game. That's like 274 hours in.
I think that Steam though shows the sort of the conflict of interest, right? Steam does not want to sell you a game that sucks, because then you can refund it. So they want you to buy a game that you really like, and they want you to keep it forever.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas IGN, on the other hand, does not care if you buy the game.
Yeah.
They have a completely different intention. They just want you to scroll through and see the ads. They don't care about the game. They don't care about the content at all. This is the same with all of these review sites, by the way. I'm picking on IGN here, but it is not a thing that is, localized just to them. All these review sites, including YouTubers, right?
Hello.
We just want you to watch as long as you possibly can. And so there is this sort of disconnect, this sort of conflict with the actual content that we are putting out, right? Which is why smaller YouTubers like the ones here on this podcast tend to be a little bit more passionate about things, tend to be a little bit more interested in putting out content that's good, right? Versus just putting out content, right? Because like a Eurogamer or a Kotaku or a Polygon, they just need to put out content because they need content because they got to keep the content going. And it doesn't really matter what the content is. Mm-hmm. It just needs to put up the ads because we got bills to pay, motherfucker. Right? So like we need to do that. YouTubers aren't usually in that same boat. And so there's this sort of conflict that you don't see with a Steam, right? Where they don't care about the reviews, they care about the game, versus an IGN where they don't care about the game, they just care about the reviews.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The individual reviewer may, but the overall site needs the clicks.
Correct. Yeah. Right. There's a conflict there. And so with older games, right, or irrelevant reviews that are no longer kind of part of whatever, because of whatever changes, right, there is this sort of problem where that game has a score. And that score is inaccurate. Right? It is inaccurate. And this comes into my very, very final point, which is that all of these websites are bowing down to a different master entirely. They are coming to the aggregation platforms, which you brought up at the very beginning, right? These Metacritics, these Rotten Tomatoes, and so on. And so the major websites are focused on catering to these aggregation platforms, right? And they're doing that because the aggregators are providing them click-through, and they're providing them people who want to come and see why they got that score, right? Yeah. And it's not so much at that point about the actual content. It's just about getting the clicks. It's just about getting the SEO. It's just about showing up that they were there, right? It's just about being part of the bigger score.
Yeah.
Right?
It reminds me of, sorry, just to cut in. There was specifically one movie reviewer. I don't remember his name, so I'm not going to say it. There was like one movie reviewer who would always latch on to the positive, like 99, 100% Rotten Tomatoes scores, and he would put the one negative in. It was the same guy every single time. Everyone always knew that's the guy who does this. But he'd do it, and people would click through because he was the one guy who would put something negative there, and something inflammatory or so obviously wrong or necessary for correction that you would click through just to see what the heck was going on.
Why are you saying this? And so they're catering to these aggregators, right? Mm-hmm. And there's this sort of other thing in the background that's happening that really kind of messes with everything, which is that aggregators don't allow you to update scores, right? And they have a very good reason, by the way, for not allowing a reviewer to update a score, which is, in fact, that Fallout occasion, right? Where they're saying, look, if we allowed you to update the score, you would feel pressure as a reviewer, right? So imagine if I go and I put up a score that's 84 and then I find out 2 days later that if I'd given it an 85, they would have gotten their $1 million bonus and I sent children home without food, right? Like I feel pressured now to update my score. Yeah. Whereas if an aggregator doesn't allow me to do that, then I don't feel that pressure hypothetically. Right?
Right.
And so that's why Metacritic, Rotten Tomatoes, and so on don't allow you to update your score. But because they don't allow you to update your score, there are these hugely irrelevant reviews and these hugely irrelevant scores that are affecting games for a long, long time. Yeah. And the one that I actually really think is super valuable here is 7 Days to Die, right? So the 7 Days to Die review is like, I don't know, a 30% or something. Like it's a 3 out of 10. It's a trash review because it was a bad game at 1.0. But we're on version 20.6 now. Right? And it will never be updated. It will never be updated.
Yeah. 7 Days to Die. I don't think I even remember that game.
I do. I spent a lot of time on that one.
When did it come out?
Yeah. And it's not, I don't know.
It's still an alpha.
Like years ago. Right.
Yeah, it's an alpha.
So if I hear about it like here,
it's
and
been
I'm like,
an alpha for over a decade. Public alpha.
So if I hear about it here, and I'm like, I want to look up a review of that game, then I fall into this issue we're talking about of like, oh, apparently it's really bad.
Yes. It's trash. What a trash game. Why would anybody like this? Right. And so there's this sort of, again, conflict where the aggregators don't accept updated scores, so reviewers have no incentive to create a fresh review or to update their summaries because, specifically, they don't make money off of those anymore. Right? because it doesn't matter. I can't update the score.
Sometimes you will see, like, just to keep going back to the number one dog, right? Sometimes you will see an IGN talk about like a new Fortnite patch or update or whatever big new live service game got a new patch or something. Sometimes you will see like a review for that stuff, but it's not very frequent.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to point at IGN because they are so large, right? And when you are talking about like video game spaces, it's not like, oh, they're so large by like 5%. They're so large by like hundreds of times, right? Like they're massive. IGN is a huge megalith in the review space. On YouTube, they represent like a percentage of all gaming viewers, right? Like it's a percentage. It's a huge deal. In the podcast space, they represent like 6 of the top 10 gaming podcasts, right? Like they are massive mega corporation. They are not a small guy. So when we talk about IGN, it's because they are leading the pack and failing to do so.
Yeah.
It's like referring to fast food as McDonald's, basically. Not all fast food is McDonald's.
They're the leader, and they're messing it up. They're ruining.
Yeah, they're the ones you think of for sure.
Oh yeah.
Well,
so that's all I had to say about that.
What have we learned here?
Just gonna get this off my chest real quick. That is the reason I really wanted to, but I ended up not doing a review series on my at the time favorite MMO, Warframe. I really wanted to do a video so bad, but I knew that in a matter of weeks it could be completely outdated.
Yeah,
because they put out such a huge amount of free content and they actively changed the game.
Yeah,
right. Like the whole game changes over not an insignificant amount of time, but like 6 months to 6 months. That game is a different game.
Yeah, you're better off being like news
or even
news
midway
channel.
through making the video, it could change.
Yeah,
and I wouldn't want to deal with that.
Yeah. I mean, imagine being the CS:GO player making videos, and then CS2 dropped a few days ago.
Yeah.
Poor guys.
Yeah.
So I guess that speaks to like an advantage we have. Where I guess if we were to look out to the future, right, where you could angle that is something like my time with Warframe or why I love Warframe so much, right?
Yeah.
It is a video about your journey with that game and why you love it. And that could be enough for people. You don't need to go into the specifics of update 13.73 or whatever to talk about why you love that game. You can just talk about it. People will watch that and they might check out the game based on that, right? Like it's kind of serving the point of a review without being a review. Unfortunately, there isn't really a space for major sites to do that, it seems. It seems like it has to be a review.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think that ever changes at this rate. I think it'd be
I don't either.
so cool to open up IGN and just see more stuff like why I love Breath of the Wild 6 years later, right? Like why Breath of the Wild is still an awesome game, or why I still don't like whatever bad game, right? Like something more personal and kind of brass tacks.
I feel like I've definitely seen that on like it's like that Breath of the Wild example. Exactly. I feel like I saw that on Polygon. Maybe like a week ago. Of someone being like, "Oh, hey, now that Tears of the Kingdom is coming out, I'm gonna finally go back to Breath of the Wild and beat it," because they told the story of them sort of having played the game over 5 or 6 years, like just coming back to it, playing a little bit each time, which isn't how I play games, but they had so it was interesting to read. Well, it was just interesting to read this other way. They said like, oh, some people explore Hyrule, and then some people. Not to fucking get into the thick of it on what it was actually in the thing, but it was like,
tell me what Breath of the Wild is.
Yeah, it was like, oh, here is a world that's still full of mystery, and I'm like, oh, that's an interesting way to do it. That isn't how I necessarily went through. I mean, it was full of mystery at one point, but now I've explored it to the point where Tears of the Kingdom is like, why do I want this? You give me the same map, but again,
like
not to get into all of that.
It was like their perspective that drew you to that, right? Which in essence, that's kind of what a review, I guess, should be like, with the perspective, right? So it's kind of the base pitch that got you in there, which maybe speaks to how you don't need a review to have a review score and be a review as strictly as drives the clicks. But those things don't drive the clicks as much, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah. So like the summary for me, right? Like the what is the solution is sort of like sort of a 3-prong kind of thing, right? I think, first of all, scores should go away, right? Because I think that scores do not help. They actively harm. And I think that we've seen that it can be done, right? Like Eurogamer and a couple others do not do scores anymore. And you see that Kotaku is moving away from scores, or has moved away from scores, I'm not sure. But scores are essentially disappearing, right? IGN is really the last bastion of everything needs to have a score. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that that's valuable. I think that you really do need to have a review, and that review needs to have a place. Because otherwise, what you have right now is it doesn't matter what the review says because there's too much water. It's 8.3 out of 10, right? Like, that's kind of the long and the short of it there. Mm-hmm. So I think the first thing is you get rid of the scores. And I think that once you've gotten rid of the scores, you will see a lot of these kind of problems of how do you compare a 6.5 from now to a 6.5 from then disappear because it doesn't matter anymore. The second thing is that I think that we really do need to kind of accept that the space for the review is in the hands of the individual YouTuber now. And I'm not saying that YouTubers are all good. I just think that YouTubers in general are better at doing this. Yeah. Right? A YouTuber is able to spend 25 hours scripting this video and then 200 hours editing it.
Everything
and
hurts
making it
Moriarty.
And turning it into a passion piece that really explains why this is such an important game, or why it's so good, or why it's a piece of shit, right? Like, that's something that IGN can't really do. Mm-hmm. And so then the third part is to move IGN's and their ilk more towards the technical, does it work or not? Right? So Cyberpunk does not work on the PS4. Cool. That's very helpful. Thank you, IGN. Right? But I really like this thing. I don't think that they do that very well, and I don't think that they ever will do it very well. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry I wrapped it up too succinctly.
Yeah, I know you did.
You know what I think the issue is? What I think the issue is I think that people are too poisoned by the American school system by thinking that 50% is a failing grade.
Yeah, that's a whole thing with it, is that, like, why are you using a 10-point scale if it's not a 10-point scale?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Like 5 is failing.
5 should be average.
It's average.
Yeah,
right.
No, it should be.
I'm louder, so I'm right. Okay.
No, that's true.
We're all agreeing.
Right. I was just not anticipating just that at all.
The energy.
I loved it though.
Yeah, the spice.
I need you to scream into my ass.
Though.
Ah!
I didn't stand up yet.
I hurt my face.
I'm gonna consume. I can't wait to wake up one night at 4 a.m. and just have Trav T-posing over me.
Could someone
screaming.
sample that sound and put it in a dubstep? Thank you.
No, I refuse.
Nico! I think that Rotten Tomatoes should adapt the Steam review system where it's like, here's all-time score of rottenness, and here's last 2 weeks score rottenness. That's a terrible idea, actually.
Yeah, no one has an incentive to come back to a movie 3 or 4 years later, I think, especially. But in game sites, maybe there's something to that. Yeah, for sure. Like a Metacritic, right? Like a new Final Fantasy 14 review has so many other things to talk about.
Why did Resident Evil 4 suddenly go from overwhelmingly positive to overwhelmingly bad? Oh, money. That's cool. Pog.
Money.
Right.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly a good thing, right? Because they introduced their microtransactions weeks later after all of the review scores were out.
I said that vaguely because I assumed someone would know, and I got really worried. I'm like, oh crap, does someone not know what I'm saying?
I didn't know.
Yeah, no, they
like that's a perfect example, right? Yeah. Because now you've incentivized the developer to hide the bad parts in order to get a better review. And then now that the review score is out, well, Metacritic says that it's an X out of 100, and therefore that's what it's going to be forever, even though now the game is disliked because of the predatory and kind of shady practices that they've introduced.
And I think that having that recent system is a good counter to that.
Yeah, right. There are systems, and there needs to be systems that handle that, but a review score is not it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. I think that wraps it all up. I think we said everything
now I'm
we
thinking,
need to.
hold on, you're not wrapping it up just yet. Now I'm thinking of how Steam reviews, I don't even use them as reviews. I just want to know, is game broken now? Am I going to go buy BioShock Remastered, go to page, see mostly negative, Last of Us 2 on Xbox, and see mostly negative? Like, now I know something happened. I'm not using the 2K launcher. I'm not using my Xbox to play The Last of Us.
Yeah, don't.
You should.
Don't use the 2K launcher.
Yeah, and then it's like, okay, I see something's wrong. I'm going to go to PCGamingWiki.com, not sponsored, just a fan, and go find out how can I skip the 2K launcher.
Yes, we will see you next week. We will be back. If you'd like to follow everyone, I am at MykonosFan, MyKONOSFAN, Moriarty at MRIXRT. Brody doesn't really have social media. Sean is Wolf Chaosan, Wolf KAOSAUN, and Trav is that Trav guy on social media platforms, except for Twitter, where he's the other Trav guy.
I'm at the other Trav guy.
Yes,
Technically,
exactly.
I'm Rocks at
My
Twitch,
thighs
but that's
hurt
it.
so bad.
Brody, you got to use this stuff before I'll plug you. But he is at Rocks, so if you want to find him for when he does go live, he is there. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. It was a fun time. Yes. I hope you got something out of this. Let us know what you think about review scores. Are they useful to you? And maybe send in a aircraft to retrieve Trav from his floor. Good night, everybody. I'm getting this out of here.
Much love.
Much love.